month passed in the blink of an eye. Above a vast, verdant primordial forest, colossal flying beasts of all kinds cut through the skies, their wings stirring the clouds as they bore long-necked beings upon their backs, descending toward the forest's heart. Amid this alien host stood a lone, unassuming human male, conspicuous among the rest, Han Li. Taj rode astride a black-winged deer, flying alongside Nuo Yifan, who sat upon a white snow eagle. Together they angled downward toward a clearing deep within the forest. Han Li followed slightly behind, seated atop a gray mammoth whose enormous ears spread like wings as it glided through the air. Once they touched down, Han Li swept his gaze over the surroundings. Dome-shaped structures lay hidden among the foliage, blending seamlessly with nature. Yet most were shattered, some half collapsed, others reduced to rubble, with lifeless bodies strewn across the ground. The fallen were largely small, gray-skinned beings with oversized heads and tightly clustered facial features, unsettlingly similar to humans. Scattered among them were long-necked warriors and demon beasts, their corpses grotesquely ravaged by spirit insect bites. After a brief search, the long-necked beings' expressions darkened, fury and grief plain to see. Soon after, Taj emerged from a ruined building, bearing the body of an elderly longneck. His face was etched with sorrow. The resemblance between them was unmistakable. This was Taj's father, the tribe's chief. Nuo Yifan stepped forward, crossed her arms, and bowed deeply to the fallen chief, murmuring words of condolence in the primordial tongue. Having learned some of the language from Xiao Bai, Han Li understood her meaning. Taj steadied himself, drew a long black bone smooth as jade from his father's robes, and raised it high as he cried out in grief. The other long-necked beings gathered around him, echoing the mournful call. Nuo Yifan then approached Han Li, her voice weary. Taj's father fell in battle. Taj will now become chief. It seems your beast race is facing dire times, Han Li said. Nuo Yifan nodded grimly. After defeating the insect race millions of years ago, we grew complacent. Though we watched them closely, they planned in secret and struck without warning. Still, once all tribes unite and summon our true spirit king, the insect race will be wiped out. Han Li showed little interest in the Grand War. How long until we reach the Calm Dawn tribe? At most 3 months, she replied. The long-necked beings held a simple rite for the dead, gathered the bodies of their kin and the peacock spirit beings, then set out once more. Leaving the ruined settlement behind, their pace quickened. Outside the beast race's core territory, danger lurked, yet aside from detours to avoid powerful primordial beasts, they traveled swiftly. Along the way, Han Li continued studying the primordial tongue with Xiao Bai while marking the terrain to refine his own map. The maps he had bought earlier were nearly useless now. Even Worm 3's map only helped him estimate his general position. 2.5 months later, they finally emerged from the endless forest. Though the long-necked beings skillfully avoided many powerful true spirits, they still faced several ambushes from the insect race. Han Li refrained from intervening, leaving Jin Tong and Xiao Bai to handle the battles. As time passed, the long-necked beings' hostility toward Han Li gradually faded. Through Taj and Nuo Yifan, he learned more of the primordial land. At last, they arrived before an immense canyon. This was Dark Star Canyon, home of the Calm Dawn tribe. Even forewarned of its might, Han Li was stunned. Towering mountains stretched beyond sight, split by a colossal white rift like a wound carved into the earth. At the canyon's mouth stood a massive white stone fortress, bristling with watchtowers and banners. The fortress rose over 100,000 feet, nearly matching the canyon's height. 3 enormous arch gates dominated its center, each guarded by black metal fences. Through the central gate roared a vast river of murky green water, thundering like the heavens themselves. Upon arrival, Nuo Yifan removed her gray cloak, revealing her graceful form beneath tight, light garments. The long-necked men averted their eyes in haste. Han Li, however, was surprised. The cloak had perfectly concealed her aura. She was at the late true immortal stage. Even in the primordial land, such refinement techniques existed, though likely reserved for powerful tribes. At that moment, dozens of figures flew out from the fortress, their light blue skin and tapered ears marking them as Calm Dawn beings. Most were slender, handsome men with faintly effeminate features. Their leader, a middle-aged man holding an azure jade staff, resembled Nuo Yifan, Dressed in off-white robes, he exuded scholarly grace. "Yifan," he called. "Father," she cried, joy lighting her face. Hovering at a distance, Han Li and the long-necked beings watched as the man gently stroked her hair. "I'm sorry you endured such danger. I'm thankful you returned safely." "I chose this path myself," Nuo Yifan replied. "We contacted the northern tribes. They've agreed to unite with Dark Star Canyon. Soon, the beast race will stand as one." The man nodded approvingly, then asked about the attacks on the Longneck and Peacock Spirit tribes. Nuo Yifan recounted the ambushes and how Chief Tak sacrificed himself to draw enemies away, then spoke of Bright Deer Hill and the pursuit by the Gray Toad tribe. "It was Senior Li who intervened and wiped them out," she said, gesturing to Han Li. The man's eyes tightened as he turned toward Han Li. Seeing a human, both he and the other Calm Dawn beings revealed traces of wariness and disdain. Sensing this, Nuo Yifan quickly added, "Without Senior Li's protection, none of us would have returned." The man's expression softened slightly. He flew forward and cupped his fist. "Thank you for saving my daughter and escorting her here. Name your compensation." Han Li raised an eyebrow. It was clear. The chief intended to repay him with treasures, then send him on his way, rather than allow him into Dark Star Canyon. Han Li replied in a flat voice, "There's no need for thanks. As for compensation, I've already told your daughter what I want." The white-robed man frowned in confusion and turned toward her. Nuo Yifan immediately relayed Han Li's request for primordial land maps through voice transmission. Upon hearing this, the man's brows knitted even tighter. He turned back to Han Li and said apologetically, "Fellow Taoist Li, I fear my daughter has promised something beyond her means. Although our Calm Dawn tribe is sizable, we are insignificant among the beast race tribes. We simply don't possess maps from all tribes. Please name another condition. I understand human customs and will ensure you receive appropriate compensation." "I'm not a primordial hunter," Han Li replied calmly. "I only need these maps to pass through the primordial land on my way to another immortal region. You may remove all tribal locations and simply mark dangerous regions and the lairs of powerful beasts." Nuo Qinglin fell silent, his expression thoughtful. Nuo Yifan stepped forward, and father and daughter exchanged several messages in hushed voice transmissions before a decision was reached. Nuo Qinglin looked back at Han Li, still unable to discern his cultivation base. "In that case, stay in our Dark Star Canyon for a few days," he said. "Other beast race tribes will be arriving soon, and I can gather their maps once they do." "Then I'll trouble you," Han Li replied with a nod. While speaking, Han Li had been observing Nuo Qinglin as well. He sensed that Nuo Qinglin had concealed his aura and was likely at the early golden immortal stage. However, given the beast race's ability to fight in tandem with demon beasts, their true combat strength likely exceeded their realm by half a step. As for the Calm Dawn warriors behind him, most were at the true immortal stage, with a few reaching early golden immortal. Nuo Qinglin then turned solemnly to Taj. "Thank you for escorting Yifan back to Dark Star Canyon. The Calm Dawn tribe will remember this. Once the war ends, we'll do everything we can to help your tribe rebuild and rise again." "Thank you, Chief Nuo," Taj said gratefully, crossing his arms and bowing. "Until then, consider Dark Star Canyon your home," Nuo Qinglin added. The long-necked beings were deeply moved, some even breaking into tears. Afterward, Nuo Qinglin led the group past the massive fortress and into the canyon. As they passed over the fortress, Han Li saw enormous winged lizard beasts lurking behind each watchtower. Their black scales gleamed faintly as they occasionally lifted their eyes skyward, all of their hostility clearly directed at him. Only after crossing the fortress did the true grandeur of Dark Star Canyon reveal itself. A green river over 10,000 feet wide thundered through the canyon's center. Sheer cliffs rose on either side, majestic and precipitous. High upon the cliff faces were countless hollowed caves of varied shapes, connected by embedded boardwalks to form an immense, intricate city. These were no crude dwellings. Pillars, railings, and engraved patterns adorned the cave fronts. Their entrances sealed by beautifully carved wooden doors. Moss, vines, and flowers clung to the stone, lending the entire settlement a serene elegance. If the Peacock Spirit Tribe's home was a forest village, then Dark Star Canyon was a flourishing city. As Han Li flew deeper, massive altar-like structures appeared on the cliffs, emitting faint array fluctuations. Aware of his sensitive status, Hanli only glanced casually at the surroundings and refrained from extending his spiritual sense too far. Noel Chinglin observed this discreet restraint and felt quietly pleased. Near the canyon's center, the group descended onto a broad cliff. "This place is peaceful," Noel Chinglin said. "You may stay here for the next few days, fellow Taoist Lee." Hanli noted that calm dawn dwellings surrounded the cliff at a careful distance, ideal for swift surveillance or encirclement if needed. "Thank you, Chief Nuo," he said with a faint smile. Nuo Chinglin and the others soon departed deeper into the canyon. After a brief hesitation, Nuo Yifan stayed behind. She approached Hanli apologetically. "Please don't misunderstand. My tribesmen are still wary of humans." "I've long wondered," Hanli said, "why you aren't." "My mother was human," she admitted softly. "I'm half human." Hanli nodded and said no more. Once alone, he briefly inspected the area with his bright sight spirit eyes before entering the cave abode. Upon opening the heavy stone doors, he frowned slightly. Thick dust coated everything, showing it had been unused for ages. With a sweep of his sleeve, a gentle breeze cleared the dust, and wall lamps ignited one by one, filling the chamber with soft light and a faint musky scent. The cave was modest, divided into two small rooms. A stone table and chair occupied the outer chamber, while the inner room held only a stone bed, simple and austere. After sealing the doors, Hanli produced array flags and plates, arranging them carefully. An hour later, the array was complete. He sat cross-legged on the stone bed and tapped the golden ring on his finger. Golden light flashed as Jintong emerged in human form. "Jintong, I'll be entering seclusion to improve my cultivation," Hanli said. "You and Xiaobai will guard me." "Why seclusion now?" Jintong asked. "The primordial land is more dangerous than expected," Hanli replied. "The heavenly court won't stop pursuing me. Only greater strength will ensure our survival." "Leave it to me," Jintong declared. "No one will disturb you." Smiling faintly, Hanli handed her a storage pouch. "Food, eat sparingly." Jintong beamed and hurried to the outer room to inspect it. Xiaobai leapt down eagerly to join her, only to be slapped aside in disdain. Hanli chuckled softly, then activated the array to seal off the inner chamber. He produced 2 jade slips and an ancient yellow scripture, the water divination time arts, the mantra axis scripture, and the illusory dawn treasured scripture. Having already read them all, he sensed a hidden connection between the three, one he had never fully explored. The mantra axis scripture was most familiar to him. He had mastered 6 levels already, aided greatly by the heaven-controlling vial. Though he had yet to cultivate the other 2, he was confident in swift progress. After a moment's thought, he picked up the water divination time arts and began studying it in earnest. Hanli pressed the jade slip containing the water divination time arts against his glabella, closed his eyes, and sat as still as carved stone. At first, his brows knit faintly in confusion, then loosened as though a spark of insight had flashed through his mind. Moments later, they furrowed again, only to relax once more. This cycle repeated again and again, like waves rising and falling. Yet as time slipped by, the furrows grew deeper, and this time the obstruction before him refused to yield. Beads of sweat formed on his brow. He remained seated without moving for 3 days and 3 nights. When he finally opened his eyes, his robes clung to his back, drenched through with sweat, and his eyes were bloodshot, leaving him looking utterly spent. "How could this be?" he muttered, removing the blue jade slip from his forehead. The water divination time arts consisted of 7 chapters. In its initial stage, one had to manifest a treasure akin to the mantra treasured axis, known as the clear time vial. This vial could absorb the radiance of sun and moon to condense time water droplets. Upon reaching the 4th chapter, these droplets could be refined into threads of time. Hanli was no stranger to such threads. Back in the spirit realm, he had seen Ashura spiders produce them, rare strands drawn from the river of time itself, imbued with time law power. Such threads could extend the lives of mortals and low-grade cultivators, or delay heavenly tribulations for those of higher cultivation. According to the scripture, the time threads refined through the water divination time arts were even richer in time law power, capable of delaying the 3 decays faced by true immortals. However, much like the mantra treasured axis, Refining the clear time vial required items infused with time law power, along with numerous other precious natural treasures. The threshold was exceedingly steep, which likely explained why so many vast flow palace cultivators had ultimately abandoned this art. Unlike the mantra axis scripture, this art did not open immortal acupoints as cultivation progressed. Instead, advancement depended on the speed at which one could generate time water droplets. Once enough droplets gathered to form a river, even more unfathomable abilities would emerge. Yet these droplets formed at a glacial pace. Centuries might pass before a single droplet appeared in the early stages, making the accumulation of an entire river seem almost inconceivable. From his reading, Han Li judged the water divination time arts to be slightly inferior to the mantra axis scripture, though it possessed its own unique strengths. Still, he had merely read through it several times and had not begun cultivating it, so his understanding remained shallow. Suppressing the confusion in his heart, he took a deep breath and turned to the illusory dawn treasured scripture. The inner chamber fell silent, save for the soft rustle of turning pages. More than a day passed in the blink of an eye before Han Li finally closed the book. He rubbed his aching glabella, yet a faint smile curved his lips. The illusory dawn treasured scripture was even more peculiar than the other two time attribute arts. Rather than a cultivation method, it was closer to a refinement scripture. At a certain stage, it allowed one to dismantle items containing time law power to extract illusory dawn sand. After refining this sand through a special technique, one could create a small sealed space, an illusory dawn sand domain, such as a sandbox or sand vial. Within these vessels, the flow of time itself could be altered. A sudden thought surfaced in Han Li's mind. If he possessed enough illusory dawn sand, could he? The idea died as quickly as it arose, replaced by a self-mocking smile. Even setting aside whether it was possible, where would he obtain such vast quantities of sand? Items containing time law power were far from easy to come by. His gaze returned to the three cultivation arts, contemplation deepening in his eyes. All three involved the laws of time, yet each focused on a different aspect. Aside from the mantra axis scripture, which directly cultivated the body, the other two revolved around treasures imbued with time law power. After careful comparison, Han Li grew increasingly convinced that a deeper connection bound the three together. While similarities were inevitable among time attribute arts, this link felt far more profound, yet remained just beyond his grasp. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Within the cave's inner chamber, Han Li stood holding the three scriptures, a wry smile on his face. Despite prolonged study and reflection, he had gained no decisive insight. I should stop here, he sighed softly. If I keep forcing it, I'll only hinder my future cultivation. With that, he put the three arts away. The laws of time were among the three paramount laws, and arts tied to them were bound to differ greatly from ordinary cultivation methods. Until he fully understood the relationship between the three, he decided not to pursue the other two. Moreover, he simply did not have the luxury of long-term seclusion. He sat down cross-legged, produced a white jade vial, and tipped out a translucent, jade-like pill before swallowing it. This was a snow soul pill, a golden immortal stage pill he had obtained from Xiao Jinhan, perfectly suited to him. After consuming it, Han Li closed his eyes and meditated until his mind settled into calm stillness. Then he pressed another white jade slip to his glabella, the fifth level of the mantra axis scripture. Golden ripples spread outward, bathing him in gentle radiance. Compared to the arduous fourth level, the fifth felt far more straightforward. After committing it to memory, he put the slip away. He formed a hand seal, and the mantra treasured axis appeared before him. Though the array concealed its fluctuations, Jin Tong and Xiao Bai still sensed something through their bond with Han Li, and turned toward the inner chamber. Time Dao runes upon the axis lit up like a chain of miniature suns. 3 months passed swiftly in seclusion. During this period, Dark Star Canyon grew bustling. In addition to the major tribes, nearly half of the smaller beast race tribes gathered there, keeping the Calm Dawn tribe exceedingly busy. Noah Yifan visited twice during the first month, only to be told Han Li remained in seclusion. After that, it was as though everyone had forgotten the human cultivator in the canyon. On this day, Jin Tong and Xiao Bai stared intently at the light barrier sealing Han Li's chamber. An hour earlier, Han Li had eaten a small round fruit speckled with golden dots. Instantly, his mantra-treasured axis shone brighter. A tiny golden vortex appeared on his thigh, drawing in vast streams of golden light. His 61st immortal acupoint had formed. With it, 2 additional time Tao runes emerged on the axis. Soon, the energy fluctuations subsided. Han Li opened his eyes, his expression more troubled than joyful. Even after consuming a fruit imbued with time law power, I barely opened a single acupoint. How many resources will it take to reach the high zenith stage? A bitter smile touched his lips. Before the thought could linger, the heaven-controlling vial suddenly rose on its own. Han Li quickly checked the mantra-treasured axis and was delighted to see an 11th time law thread encircling it. The golden fruit from Gongshu Ju had granted him another time law thread, an unexpected boon. Judging by the vial's reaction, another vision was imminent. As expected, a deep rumble echoed. The heaven-controlling vial swelled to the size of a millstone and released a thick pillar of green light, striking the chamber's barrier and forming a translucent wall. Unable to see inside, Jin Tong and Xiao Bai could only return to the stone table in boredom. Within the wall of light, a green vortex slowly formed. A tremendous suction erupted, wrenching Han Li's soul from his body and drawing it into the light in an instant. Han Li's consciousness drifted back like a tide returning to shore, and as he opened his eyes, he calmly examined his surroundings. This time, he was already prepared in his heart, so there was no panic, only a restrained excitement and curiosity stirring within him. Such experiences were exceedingly rare and precious. Though they temporarily consumed his time Tao runes, they had always rewarded him with immense insight. Before him stretched several vast white plazas, encircled by rows of white jade palaces that extended endlessly into the distance. Even the mountains floating in midair were studded with palaces, majestic and imposing. At a glance, it was clear that he was within an enormous sect, yet smoke curled upward everywhere. Many palaces lay shattered, and several floating mountains bore heavy damage, clear signs that a great battle was raging. Sure enough, countless cultivators clashed in the skies above, divided into 2 camps. One side wore pure white robes, while the other was clad in golden attire, the unmistakable garb of the heavenly court. The 2 forces were evenly matched for now, and no clear victor had yet emerged. After surveying the battlefield, Han Li shifted his gaze forward and saw a faint projection of his mantra-treasured axis hovering before him. Semi-transparent light radiated from the time Tao runes engraved upon it, and several had already dimmed. Their rate of fading was exactly the same as before. He then turned his attention to the body he currently possessed. It belonged to a white-robed cultivator slumped in the corner of the plaza. The man was tall and gaunt, with straw-yellow hair and skin as dry and wrinkled as ancient bark, clearly not a human. A gaping hole marred his lower abdomen, nearly cutting him in half, and green blood pooled beneath him. He had clearly been dead for quite some time. Han Li frowned slightly. This man looks familiar. Where have I seen him before? He searched his memories, but no answer surfaced. Shaking his head, he abandoned the thought and prepared to probe the man's memories instead. At that instant, a thunderous boom echoed through the heavens. The clouds above churned violently, forming a massive vortex in the blink of an eye. Earth-shaking rumbles rolled outward as beams of dazzling golden light shot forth from within. The light was blinding like the sun itself, and Han Li was stunned by the terrifying law power contained within. This was time law power, something he knew all too well, yet compared to this, his own mastery was laughably insignificant. The power within those golden beams was vast and unfathomable, inspiring awe and reverence. Who could possibly cultivate time laws to such an extreme? Han Li was so shaken that he forgot to draw upon his host body altogether. Suddenly, the golden beams transformed into lotus-shaped fireballs that rained down from the vortex. One such fireball descended upon a white-robed golden immortal, who hastily erected multiple layers of protective barriers while retreating. But the golden flames pierced through the defenses as if they were paper, landing squarely on his shoulder. Before he could even scream, his body rapidly aged, crumbling into ashes within moments. Han Li inhaled sharply. Elsewhere, the remaining golden fireballs struck other white-robed cultivators with unerring precision, completely avoiding the heavenly court forces. In the blink of an eye, nearly half of the white-robed cultivators were reduced to dust. At that critical moment, a radiant golden cloud surged upward from the largest floating mountain, emitting brilliant rays of light. Hanli's heart jolted as he sensed that it, too, carried time law power, less overwhelming than that of the vortex, yet still countless times stronger than his own. The golden cloud expanded rapidly, covering the sky and blocking the falling fireballs. However, it was visibly worn down in the process. Suddenly, a rotund monk in red robes appeared above the cloud. He was towering and massively built, like a walking mountain of flesh, with layers of fat squeezing his eyes into narrow slits. Hanli's pupils shrank. This was the same monk he had once seen lecturing through the heaven-controlling vial. In that instant, realization struck him. The body he was possessing belonged to one of the 5 listeners present at that lecture. The red-robed monk's face was calm as he formed a hand seal and intoned, "Let there be wind." Azure runes flew from his mouth and transformed into a colossal tornado. Within it, countless blades of wind howled and spun, tearing open black spatial rifts as waves of spatial fluctuations surged outward. The tornado swept toward the vortex with devastating might. This is his mantra domain. Hanli recognized it immediately. It was thanks to overhearing part of this monk's teachings that he himself had learned this technique. But while Hanli's version was only an illusion, this azure tornado was undeniably real. By his estimation, being caught within it would mean instant annihilation. Howling winds ravaged the palaces below, flinging weaker cultivators helplessly away. The body Hanli possessed was also swept up, and this was precisely what he wanted. He hastily drew upon the remaining immortal spiritual power, shrouding himself in yellow light before diving into the ground and fleeing at full speed. To his surprise, very little power remained, yet it was astonishingly pure, far purer than his own. Just then, golden light flared once more within the vortex. An enormous golden hand emerged, over 100 acres in size, bearing a massive golden halo at its center. As it pressed downward, boundless time law power flooded the world. In an instant, the azure tornado froze in place. The raging winds, the battling cultivators, even the red-robed monk poised to unleash another technique, all were immobilized. Hanli himself was halted mid-escape, suspended within the earth. The entire world stood still. Only the giant golden hand continued its descent. When it touched the azure tornado, the storm disintegrated into countless specks of light. The hand then descended gently upon the red-robed monk, and before Hanli's disbelieving eyes, the monk's body shattered and vanished just the same. Afterward, the golden hand withdrew into the vortex, shrinking away in a flash. In the next breath, time resumed its flow. Both sides stared in stunned silence before noticing the monk's remains falling from the sky. Grief and despair overtook the white-robed cultivators, while the heavenly court forces erupted in joy. With numbers and morale broken, the battle quickly turned into a one-sided slaughter. Deep underground, Hanli could finally move again. His consciousness felt briefly blank just moments ago, so fleeting that he could not tell if it had been real. Yet when he sensed that 2 more time dial runes on his mantra-treasured axis had faded, he knew it was no illusion. Extending his spiritual sense upward, he saw only a pile of disintegrated flesh where the monk had stood. From its lingering aura, Hanli's expression changed dramatically. That monk had wielded power beyond any cultivator Hanli had ever encountered, yet he had been slain in an instant. Soon after, the vortex in the sky slowly dissipated and vanished entirely. Hanli stood motionless for a moment before regaining his composure. Instead of fleeing farther away, he burrowed even deeper into the earth, stopping only after reaching extreme depths. There, he finally let out a silent sigh of relief and began to draw upon his host's memories. Fragments of memory surged into his mind. After sorting through them, Hanli learned the truth. The sect above was none other than the true mantra sect. From the memories lingering within the possessed body, Hanli learned that this vast land was known as the Black Soil Immortal Region, a territory countless times greater than the northern glacial immortal region. Dominating this realm stood the true mantra sect, an unrivaled colossus that had existed since ancient times, Its disciples spread across immeasurable lands. The body Han Li now inhabited belonged to Mu Yan, one of the true mantra sect's 5 grand elders. Mu Yan's master was none other than the red-robed monk he had glimpsed earlier, Sect Master Miro, a great encompassment cultivator revered throughout the region as Immortal Lord Miro, a being who stood at the very apex of the Black Soil Immortal region. Immortal Lord Miro had 5 direct disciples in total. Aside from Mu Yan, the remaining 4 were likewise grand elders of the sect, and they were the same figures who had been present during Miro's final lecture, witnessed in the vision. All 5 disciples were high zenith cultivators, each standing far above ordinary immortals. Yet despite Immortal Lord Miro's unfathomable cultivation and terrifying might, he had been slain in a single instant. This alone proved that the owner of that colossal descending hand was an existence beyond comprehension. From Mu Yan's knowledge, the only thing he knew was that this enemy hailed from the heavenly court. Han Li knew well that only an exceedingly small number of beings in the true immortal realm possessed the power to instantly kill a great encompassment cultivator. Almost without thinking, a name surfaced in his mind: the Time Tao Ancestor. It was now clear that the true mantra sect had been eradicated by the heavenly court. After Immortal Lord Miro fell beneath the hand of the Time Tao Lord, the sect had inevitably met its doom. Han Li could not help but wonder why the heavenly court had gone to such lengths, even dispatching a Tao ancestor personally, simply to annihilate a single sect. Among the 3 paramount laws, the laws of time reigned supreme, surpassed only by their 2 counterparts. If the one who slew Immortal Lord Miro truly was the Time Tao ancestor, then he was undoubtedly among the most terrifying beings in the entire true immortal realm. Han Li drew in a slow breath to steady himself and continued delving into Mu Yan's memories, seeking further clues about the heavenly court. After killing Gongshu Ju in the Infernal Frost Immortal Manor, he had already become an enemy of the heavenly court. Though he lacked the strength to oppose them now, understanding his foe was never a disadvantage. Soon, his heart began to pound with excitement. As a high zenith cultivator, Mu Yan's memories were vast and profound, containing far more information about the heavenly court than Han Li had ever been able to uncover before. In the past, all the intelligence Han Li had gathered was shallow and publicly known, offering little real value. Just as he was about to probe deeper, a sudden wave of dizziness struck him without warning. Startled, Han Li immediately halted his search, and only then did the dizziness slowly fade. He quickly realized the cause. Though Mu Yan was dead, his cultivation base had far surpassed Han Li's own. Forcibly combing through these memories was akin to performing a soul search. A golden immortal, no matter how strong his spiritual sense, was ill-suited to probing the soul remnants of a former high zenith cultivator. Had Mu Yan still been alive, Han Li would not have escaped with such mild repercussions. With no choice, Han Li temporarily abandoned the memory search and turned his attention to his surroundings while allowing his soul to recover. He was deep underground, tightly encased by layers of soil that pressed uncomfortably against his body. With a sweep of his hand, yellow light burst outward, carving out an empty space 50 to 60 feet wide and forcibly repelling the surrounding earth. He then sat down cross-legged and began to recuperate. One by one, the Time Tao runes on the mantra treasured axis dimmed and vanished. Only after more than 30 had faded did the strain on his soul finally ease, allowing him to return to normal. He then resumed piecing together Mu Yan's fragmented memories, this time proceeding with caution. Gradually, he uncovered more about the heavenly court. It was the supreme governing force of the true immortal realm, ruling all immortal regions through immortal palaces, while its true seat lay within the Middle Earth immortal region. The heavenly court did indeed house a Time Tao ancestor, the most ancient and esteemed of all Tao ancestors. Once more, Han Li's soul trembled, forcing him to stop again. As he rested, a single question echoed in his mind. Just who exactly was this Time Tao ancestor? After a long while, dozens more Time Tao runes on the mantra treasured axis faded away, and Han Li finally recovered enough to continue. On his 3rd attempt, his expression gradually turned grim as he uncovered the truth behind the true mantra sect's destruction. In theory, With a great encompassment cultivator like Immortal Lord Miro presiding over it, the true mantra sect should have prospered for untold ages. After all, only Tao ancestors could reliably threaten someone of that level. Yet it was Immortal Lord Miro himself who had sealed the sect's fate. The Time Tao ancestor had come to view Miro as a looming threat and chose to strike before matters spiraled beyond control. The reason lay in a secret known to very few. All 3,000 great Tao laws stemmed from the great Tao of heaven and earth. Just as two tigers could not share the same mountain, each law could only have one Tao ancestor. If a great encompassment cultivator's mastery of a law surpassed that of the existing Tao ancestor, then the latter would be replaced. What exactly occurred during such a replacement was beyond the knowledge of a mere high zenith cultivator like Mu Yan. However, one thing was clear. All Tao ancestors closely monitored cultivators who practiced the same laws as themselves, especially those at or above the high zenith stage. Unless such individuals willingly submitted, they would be eliminated before their power could fully mature. Even so, Tao ancestors had been replaced before. Every one of them had climbed to the summit by stepping upon the corpses of failed contenders. Immortal Lord Miro had cultivated the laws of time to the great encompassment stage, making him an existential threat to the Time Tao ancestor. Despite his utmost efforts to conceal his strength, he was ultimately exposed, bringing about his own death and the annihilation of the true mantra sect. Han Li frowned slightly. Though he was still far from the high zenith stage, wouldn't he one day face the same danger? Cultivators truly walked a path beset by peril at every turn. For those who mastered law powers, the corresponding Tao ancestor was akin to the heavens themselves. Only by defying the heavens could one reach the ultimate peak. Knowing that he was in no position to contend with the heavenly court, Han Li pushed these thoughts aside and continued examining Mu Yan's remaining memories. Only a small fragment remained unsearched, and suddenly joy lit up his face. These memories contained Mu Yan's cultivation experiences. Like his master, Mu Yan had also cultivated the laws of time. Though the memories did not include his actual cultivation techniques, they held invaluable insights and experiences. Han Li had never received guidance in his pursuit of the laws of time. This was precisely what he lacked. He immediately immersed himself in these memories. Before long, intrigue filled his eyes. He realized that Mu Yan's experiences revolved heavily around the mantra axis scripture, the illusory dawn treasured scripture, and the water divination time arts. Han Li had long suspected a hidden connection between these three techniques, yet he had never been able to grasp it. Now, through these memories, he seemed to glimpse a way to merge the three into a single path. After finishing his search, Han Li lifted his gaze toward the projection of the mantra treasured axis. Most of its time Tao runes had already faded, with only a few dozen still glowing faintly. Time was running short. He immediately searched Mu Yan's body for storage tools, believing that Mu Yan's cultivation manuals must be stored within them. If he could find those, the mystery linking the three techniques might finally be resolved. To his disappointment, there was nothing. They must have been taken by Mu Yan's killer. A trace of regret surfaced on Han Li's face. At that moment, a surge of intense resentment erupted from the remnants of Mu Yan's soul, filled with hatred and betrayal. Han Li sensed the fury clearly and gently soothed it with calm words. Only then did the lingering anger slowly dissipate, fading back into silence.